call the meeting to order. We have regrets from Councillor Verbeek tonight. Family emergency. I hope everything's good with her, and we'll keep our prayers with her. And we're gonna have Rob, if you can give us a report on the closed meeting report, please.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. Council did meet in closed session earlier this evening, as permitted to do so under Section 239(2) of the Municipal Act. In that session, Council did receive an update on a litigation administrative tribunal matter, and Council also received an update on a potential land acquisition matter. And that's the extent of my report this evening, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Rob. Any conflict of interest amongst council members here tonight? Seeing none, I need a motion for the adoption of the published agenda tonight, please. Councillor Bowman and Councillor Guerin, and before I call a vote, Rob, you had something to add?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just two amendments. Councillor Verbeek has advised the clerk's office that she wishes to defer her notice of motion in 15.1.2, and that's the notice of motion dealing with recycling. She has asked that Councillor Verbeek also has a notice of motion concerning outdoor spaces for businesses. She asked that, should it be Council's desire, that she is okay with that discussion going forward and potentially a motion from that. And then second item, Councillor Bondi provided notice that she wished to add a notice of motion. It would be for presentment only, and it would be added to the agenda under 15.2.2.
Thank you, Rob. So I need a motion to adopt the published agenda, please, without the additions. Deputy Mayor Melange and Councillor Bowman. All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. I need the adoption of the minutes of the regular council meeting for May 19th, please.
Sorry, just give me
That's okay.
1 minute.
I was a little bit fast. Councillor Guerin and Councillor Bowman. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Go ahead. Go ahead, Rob.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Our first report this evening is from our Chief Administrative Officer, Chris Nepsey, who's providing a verbal update on COVID-19.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yep, thank you, Your Worship. So there's a few items I want to go through tonight with Council. Number one, we opened the doors to our facilities today, Town Hall and Guest Home. After weeks of preparation, I can strongly say that closing is easy, opening is not, reopening is not. So extensive protocols in place, extensive signage, separate deliveries, separate access and egress where we're able to for residents coming in. Residents must wear a mask, not supplied by the town. Plexiglass is up, protocols are in place in terms of cash handling, material handling, and whatnot. So, you know, other municipalities are beginning to open. I think Amherstburg or LaSalle is looking to open the next day or two. Amherstburg looking to start next week, Tecumseh in the next few weeks. So the one message I guess I push to both staff and residents is be patient with us. If there are issues, you know, you can look at something a million times and then run through it and go, oh, geez, we wish we would have done that or have this signage. So we already made a few changes today to make improvements, and we'll continue to do that. As well, it's important to note we're closed from 11:30 to 1 for cleaning that way, so that I think it's 1, correct me if I'm wrong, Doug, but to do some cleaning and preparation during that time. So all in all, a success. We had a handful of people at Town Hall today. We had to, I guess, correct some people on, you know, where to come and where to go. You know, people have been visiting Town Hall for decades, and they're used to going in a door and out in a certain door. So we had to kind of, coach them along in terms of follow arrows and follow signage, but all in all, a success. So that's number one. Number two, as I indicated to council today in an email and the past few weeks, you've seen on AM100 and the Windsor Star, random testing tomorrow at the Essex Arena. So this is an extension of the testing that the Windsor Essex County Health Unit started in the city of Windsor, where they tested over 1,700 people the past several days at Silver City. We've agreed to, we met today, we went through the logistics. We're looking to use the Essex Arena as our location from 9 till 5. The Essex Arena allows us to have access off Fairview and exiting on Gosfield. There's enough parking space in the arena, and they've set it up, or going to be set up, in a fashion where we shouldn't have any traffic queue or spillage out onto Fairview. We should be able to contain the cars that we have within the arena site, which is a positive that way. So that's been posted to our Facebook. That's out now. And I think they're looking to get a sample of 200 or so, and then move to Leamington area Wednesday, and then, following Amherstburg, LaSalle, Tecumseh. They're looking to get a true random testing at a single point in time, I guess, of people that have potential or tested positive or are positive for COVID and maybe don't know it, whether they're symptomatic or asymptomatic. So that's number two. Number three, we are going to the Unemployment Health Center and Unit 444 are going to be running the food hamper program again this Saturday. Essex 9 to 11 and Harrow 12 till 2. Again, if you want to volunteer, contact Dave Cassidy that way with Unit 444, and he can connect you with the appropriate people. We're providing them the facility like we did before. It ran fairly seamless the first day, so I'm hoping for continued success and seamless, I guess, operations on Saturday as well. So let everybody know. Number four, I think, is something that has been swirling around in our meetings, and there's a few, I guess they kind of fall in the same line, and it's something I've been dealing with the health unit and Dr. Ahmed on the past week or 2 weeks, and pushing for direction from the health unit. So one being the beaches, the use of beaches, and two being boot camp and physical fitness camps outdoors in passive parks. So the direction from the health unit, I'm still awaiting some direction. From their understanding, the beaches aren't closed. From my understanding and from our neighboring municipalities, the beaches fell under the outdoor parks order of being closed. What you're seeing now from other municipalities are treating beaches similar to passive parks. So as long as people are using the beach where they're socially separated and their numbers or groups are less than 5, they're treating them as passive parks as such. If they're not playing volleyball and they're not playing football and they're not doing these big group things, then from what we're seeing, other municipalities are saying, you know what, if you're lying on the beach and you're suntanning with your radio and you have less than 5 and you're 2 meters apart, we're not going to bother you. And I would recommend for council, and the direction I'd like to proceed is that similar vein. We have limited resources. If people are doing what they need to do and being self-accountable and not being stupid and not being, large groups, and whether they're on the sand or walk 10 feet away and on the grass in the park, which they're able to be, then I say I'm okay to let them be in the beach that way. So for all intents and purposes, I would recommend to council that we consider that a passive park, open with all those social distance, social separation, gathering numbers in place. So that's for beaches. With respect to boot camps and fitness camps, I had a discussion with Dr. Ahmed and the CAOs on Friday surrounding that. And in the same vein, if there's an organized group of less than 5 and they're 2 meters apart, and they're not interacting with each other, doing the volleyball or football or soccer or the organized sports that are the organized fields are closed, then I say as a municipality, if people are taking care of themselves, then we let them do that. Our resources again are our police, our bylaw enforcement to go out and enforce whether you have a group of 5 doing yoga at Sadler's Park or a group of 5 doing CrossFit somewhere else. I think there's bigger issues at hand than that. So the same direction as the beaches, I would recommend to council that that's something that we're not going to start questioning whether they're a paid group or an organized group. But if they're 5 and they're being smart and being safe, then we let well enough be alone. So that's the things that I wanted to touch on with COVID. Director Morrison has some financial things he wants to talk about, but I think before he does, I'd like to take any questions or comments on what I've touched.
Any questions from council? Councillor Guerin?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks, Chris, for that report. All positive things. The tunnel is getting brighter and brighter as we continue with this journey. Very good news for our fitness groups in the town of Essex. And I like the aggressive approach on it. And I think it's a no-brainer. As long as people, I think, are practicing that social distancing and doing no harm, I see no problem with it as well. Thank you very much for the report.
Thank you, Councillor. Anybody else from council? Councillor Bowman.
Yeah, I just want to comment to Chris. I think it's a common sense approach and moving forward. I mean, people take it whichever way they want, but I think it's a common sense approach and it makes sense to enforce it that way. And moving forward, who knows what people will do, but at least it gives some semblance of reason on what we're doing. So I support his take on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bondi, you had.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you to our CAO and to just our council in general, particularly our public health representative, Mr. Mayor. I just want to say I have read through the emails to public health and the hospital CEO and EMS, and I do agree with the random testing. I think that's a positive move in our community. I do believe, hindsight's 2020. We didn't have it with long-term care homes, but now we're starting to see articles out there that migrant workers. So, of course, I'm no doctor, but I represent people in our community as well. So I really hope that we take a more of an erring on the side of caution in terms of swabbing members of those vulnerable populations. The random testing is great. I think we need that, but we really have to stand up and support those vulnerable populations, especially when you have other, pools of resources that are willing to help. Serial testing is something that I don't know if the health board is going to lobby to get back into the long-term care homes. It's something that stood out in the email chains, but really just as a counselor, kind of disgusted in how it's been handled, and hopefully we can go forward and try to get on top of it so that the migrant workers aren't impacted negatively. Mr. Nepsey, you made my day tonight. You said some really great things, and I am excited that people can start getting active on our beaches and doing those boot camp things. So that is a very positive development, and I thank you for that.
Deputy Mayor Malash.
Thank you, through you, your worship, to Mr. Nepsey. First of all, you were talking about the testing, and I just did I hear you say that we were going to have only 200 tests done tomorrow, or is it limited to a certain number? That's my first question.
Through your worship, I believe, now, I don't know what the cap is on the testing. I think they're looking for a minimum of 200. So it's really the health units program. And we're really, I mean, I was made aware of this late on Friday, and we're pulling it together and providing support to the health unit in terms of barricades, the facilities. So I can find out for you. I mean, we'll find out tomorrow, but I believe that's the minimum they're looking for. I think the minimum they were looking for in Windsor, because of the larger population, was much higher. But I think in each site within the municipality, I believe I recall him saying 200, but I think just at a minimum.
Okay, that's fine. I just didn't want it to be the maximum. I didn't want people to line up and find out after an hour they did the 200 tests and nobody else through the day could get tested. But you're talking about them.
I'll confirm that, Deputy Mayor Milosh. I'll confirm that so that, yeah, because they wouldn't want to be in a situation like that. So
that would make more sense that it's a minimum of 200. The other, I just wanted to compliment you as well on what you're trying to achieve with more activities to be done in the community. We know it's all a concern to many business operators, and if people are being responsibly distancing themselves, I can't see any reason why we shouldn't allow that in our parks as well, for gyms to work out and things like that. But is that just something right now that you're asking for? It hasn't been passed yet, correct?
Yeah, through your worship, I don't know if it's really a change in anything. It's more of a, I guess, a recommendation on the direction I want to head. And I'm just kind of looking for council's head nod. I don't think we need it passed as a bylaw or a direction, more as, unless someone has major opposition, that's the direction I'm heading as the administration here.
Okay, great. Thank you. So we can make this move on our own then.
Yeah, through your worship, I think this is that gray area where the province has kind of given the rules, but the parameters within those rules has been left gray. And you know, the distinguishing between 5 friends together in a park doing yoga and 5 people organized doing something, we don't need to get in that. I think as long as people are being safe and practicing smart measures, then, you know, that's not an issue. Now, if it becomes larger and it becomes 10 and 15 and it starts to become something more than, you know, simply 5 people doing what they need to do, then we may have an issue. But this is where we're at right now.
Perfect. That's great. That's really good news. Thank you very much.
Councillor Vanendel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Mr. Nepsy, thanks for the report. Like the Deputy Mayor, I'd like to see those details about the tests put out there, possibly on our website. And I think you said that they're occurring on Saturday as well. So if people want to have a chance tomorrow, they can go Saturday. Is that correct?
No, through your worship, the testing in Essex is tomorrow. And then they'll be moving through the municipality. On Saturday is the food hamper drive that
yes, okay,
a couple of weeks ago. So it's different. Although, not to say that if someone missed in Essex, I'm not sure how it works if you want to drive to another municipality for that random testing. I believe you could, because I think at the end of the day, you just need a valid health card. Yeah, in Essex is just tomorrow.
Chris.
Okay, thank you very much. And I wanted to say that I think it's a great decision that we're going to be allowing people to make some of their own intelligent choices. Councillor Bondi talked about erring on the side of caution. Well, I think turning a 2-week shutdown into 3 months is more than caution. I think it's high time we let people make some of their own decisions about their own health. And if people think this is too risky, they can simply stay home. But I think it's high time we started using the parks and allowing people to use their own common sense in this. And thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bjorkman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was going to save this for councillor notes, but since we're talking on this, I shared a story earlier today with council, and just as a cautionary tale, I just want to let people know that I believe in the testing. I went and got tested at Silver City on the weekend, and when I went to work this morning, we were talking about it in the office, and manager heard that I'd gotten the random testing. I have no symptoms. We were just being a data point. I was asked to leave the building and to go home until my results come in. So everybody's place of work is different. I would just like to put out there that you should check with your HR department. And the line in our questions that we get asked when we go in the morning, the one line says, are you awaiting results from a COVID test? It doesn't say, and are you symptomatic? Did a doctor tell you should do it? So I think it's important. It needs to be done. This is a picture that we're trying to take of the county. We're trying to help. The government's encouraging it. The health unit's encouraging it. So it's a good thing to do, but you need to make sure you're protecting yourself and your work. We've been told all along we should follow the science. We're doing the science. We're finding the best ways to protect people. Well, we've done the science. We now know how to protect people. So let's let people get out there and do the work they need to do, and do the exercise they need to do, and live the lives they need to get their emotional and mental health back as well. So, but protect yourself, check with your HR department before you decide to go and do a random test that could keep you out of work. Thank you.
Chris, is that tomorrow at what time? Is it 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock they open? Do you know?
It's 9 till 5, Your Worship.
9 to 5. Okay, thank you. Anybody else from council? And I'll say to you, Chris, thank you very much for all the work you've put into this report, and thank you for everything you're doing. And I guess we'll turn it over to Jeff Morrison. Yep. Jeff, you had Jeff? Go ahead, Jeff.
Hi, through the chair. So the Countywide Treasurers Group met last Thursday, May 28th, to discuss property tax relief measures, water, wastewater relief measures, because we're heading into June and the penalty and interest waiver expires at the end of June. So based on the current climate and the slow climb out of this, we as the group kind of came to the consensus that we should extend the waiver of penalty and interest until the end of July, and that way it will encompass the extend the waiver of penalty and interest on property taxes until July 31st, 2020. So we'll extend it one more month, and we'll regroup again in a couple of weeks, and then a couple of weeks after that to have a further conversation. From a financial perspective, I'd like to let council know that we ran some analytics now that we have some reliable data. So the April installment for 2020, there was 30% of, so if you look at the amount of property taxes that was outstanding, you relate that to the installment amount, and it's not just related to that installment, it's the total amount. There was approximately 30% outstanding. In 2019, there was 34% outstanding. So we're actually trending 4% better than we were in 2019. And I can probably relate that to collection efforts in 2019, early 2020. And yeah, people were just paying more. So it's costing us about $29,900 a month for the waiver of interest and penalty. So you have that information. So to the end of June, it's costing the municipality approximately $60,000. So the end of July, it will be about $90,000. That way you can quantify it.
Thank you, Jeff. I think we need a motion to the extension, don't we?
So through the chair, I'd like to extend the waiver of penalty and interest on property taxes until July 31st, 2020, and extend the waiver of interest on water and wastewater until July 31st, 2020.
Thank you, Jeff. So I'm going to need a motion to accept that, please. Deputy Mayor Malash and Councillor Bowman, any questions? All in favor? Carried. Thanks, Jeff, and thanks, Chris, for the report. Receive report as well. Yeah, and I need a motion to receive the report. Councillor Bjorkman, and Councillor Vandendal. All in favor? Okay, thank you. Thank you, Council.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, under reports this evening, our second report is 8.2, Planning Report 2020-07, read changes to Planning Act timelines during the COVID-19 emergency. And on that report, Mr. Mayor, we have our Director of Development Services, Lori Chadwick, who has asked to speak to this report.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, good evening, Mayor Snively and Council. If okay with you, Mr. Mayor, may I proceed?
Yep, go ahead.
Okay. Okay.
We're trying to get you
So-
up on the screen here.
Pardon?
We're trying to, okay, here you are. Okay, we're just waiting to get you up on the screen. You're all
Okay.
set. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So Planning Report 2020-07, this report is, the purpose of the report rather is twofold. The first purpose is that we would like to outline for you changes to the Planning Act timelines during COVID-19 and this emergency that we're currently in. And then also we are seeking your support in bringing forward new planning applications during this emergency. So MMH's intent in passing these amendments to the Planning Act was also twofold. On one hand, it allows municipalities to hit the pause button on planning decision timelines without putting us at risk for something called non-decision appeals. It's on the other hand, it also allows municipalities to proceed with the processing of planning applications by holding virtual public meetings and engaging the public using alternative methods where a public meeting is required under the Planning Act. So bringing it down to the town of Essex, what does that mean for us? Well, since there are some applications under the Planning Act that do not require a public meeting separate from a regular council meeting, we are proceeding with processing those applications being, for example, site plan control applications, as well as holding removal, part lot control exemption as well. But since there are requirements for public meetings separate from a regular council meeting under certain planning applications, we at this time are not processing those applications, being zoning bylaw amendment applications, official plan amendment applications, plan of subdivision applications, those being new ones, as well as any new minor variances or new consents to sever, those being under the Committee of Adjustment. So what we're asking for is that for a few reasons why we're asking council to support that we proceed with processing those applications so as to prevent a backlog of development applications waiting to be processed and to ensure that we continue doing business in the community. So for those reasons, we're recommending that new planning applications be brought forward to council as well as to the Committee of Adjustment for public hearing. To give you some perspective, I'd like to also share with you really what we propose to do in place of a typical public meeting where you would have a drop-in style or a information session in a community center, for example. We propose to essentially accommodate public meetings under the Planning Act through alternative methods, such as mailing notice of a virtual public meeting to surrounding property owners with instructions on how to participate, posting those notices to our town's website as well as council calendar, providing for those members of the public to submit their comments via email, mail, or even over the phone. And then finally, an alternative method using web forms or survey seeking feedback from the public on an application. I'd like to also share with you, similar in nature to the topic of this report, although not a Planning Act matter, we also propose to undertake these alternative methods to engaging the public during the review of the sign bylaw, which, if you guys recall, is a project that is stemming out of a recent site-specific sign bylaw amendment application for a media sign at Crew Winery. So similar in nature, although not under the Planning Act, we also propose to undertake those alternative methods to engaging the public for that signed bylaw review, which is actually an application under the, or rather a project under the Municipal Act. So that's it on the report 2020-07. Thank you for your consideration, and I'm here to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Lori. Any questions from council on this report? Seeing none, I think I need a motion to receive it and to move the recommendation. Councillor Bjorkman and Councillor Vandendal. All in favor? Carried. Thank you, Lori.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Our next report this evening under 8.3 is Planning Report 2020-08, Provincial Policy Statement 2020. And this report as well, our Director of Development Services is looking to speak to this as well.
Thank you. Okay, Lori, you're all set.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good evening again to council. Just to give you a brief summary, I'd like to hand the baton over in just a moment. The province, through the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing, leads the planning system in Ontario, meaning that the foundation for land use planning, how to use our land in Ontario resourcefully and appropriately, is set out in something called the Provincial Policy Statement. So effective May 1st, the province rolled out some amendments to the PPS after undertaking a year or so of consultation efforts with municipalities and amongst us as planning professionals in Ontario. Our manager of planning services, Rita Jabour, has been an impressive ear and voice along the way and is quite knowledgeable not only on the changes to the PPS, but specifically what it means for us in the town of Essex. In fact, I believe that Rita is giving our resident wise planner, Jeff Watson, a run for his money as emerging policy expert. So I'd like to put a spotlight on planning services by asking Rita to provide you with a brief summary of this report and to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Lori. And Rita? Rita?
Chair. Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for having me this evening, and thank you, Lori, for those kind words. I'm always enthusiastic to speak about policy, even on a dreary Monday night. So again, like Lori stated, the purpose of this report is to inform you of changes to the provincial policy statement, which came into effect on May 1st, 2020. For those council members who are seasoned and for those who are new, you would have heard me refer to the provincial policy statement in reports of mine and public presentations of mine concerning zoning bylaw amendments. And for those who have appeared at the Committee of Adjustment concerning severance applications and minor variance applications, because the PPS and the set of policies that are enshrined under the PPS affect virtually all decisions regarding planning matters. They include subdivisions, official plan amendments, and again, consents and variances. And you, council, as the decision makers on planning matters and Committee of Adjustment members, are affected by these changes because they will direct your decisions ultimately. So in terms of how we implement the PPS policies, before I get into some specific changes, the policies of the PPS are implemented primarily through your official plan, which is adopted by council, approved by the County of Essex as well. And again, you use that as a guide to make decisions on your applications. However, the Government of Ontario, as the government should, reviews the PPS every 5 years. So here we are in 2020, and like Lori stated, the government initiated the review of PPS 2014 and 2019 with really an eye to increasing Ontario's housing supply. So what we have in front of us is PPS 2020, which really has pillars that include throughout each one indication of how to increase the housing supply. And if I may, I will start with the first, and I'll just briefly go over it and summarize how it affects our own official plan. The first is increasing Ontario's housing supply and mix. So we have a longer planning horizon. Instead of 20 years, we are to plan for 25 years, and we are to allow for a housing land supply of 5 more years. So instead of allowing for 10 years of housing land supply, we now have to allow for 15 years. And the government has made it even easier for us to do this by allowing for settlement area boundary adjustments outside of comprehensive official plan reviews. So prior to PPS 2020, the only time you can amend boundaries on a settlement area, and your settlement area will include places like Essex Center and Harrow, is at the time of a comprehensive official plan review, which only happens every 5 years. So now with the PPS changes, we can do this outside of a comprehensive review, subject to meeting those tests that are outlined in the report. We also now have a new definition for housing options, which not only refers to a variety of housing, including tiny homes, but also refers to a variety of housing arrangements, which can include life leases and cooperative housing as well. So I use a bit of an example in the report, and that example pertains to housing options which meet the needs regarding demographic changes for the town of Essex. So we know that in the town of Essex, we have more of a bottom-heavy population, meaning more seniors, more retirement-aged residents, and a lot of them do like to go to Florida, and they like to come back and enjoy our warm spring and summer season. So with the help of the PBS, we could look at more land lease community housing options for this demographic of our town. The next is our support of rural, northern, and indigenous communities. Very important for the town of Essex because 80% of our land base is agricultural and it's rural. So now we know for sure, we have clarification that we can create lots on rural lands. It doesn't mean you can create lots on agricultural lands, that's still prohibited, but there are lands within our official plan that are located outside of our settlement areas that are designated rural residential or that are designated for recreational purposes. So the process has now clarified that lot creation on these lands is permitted so long as we allow for, private sanitary sewage services, private water services. So even though services might be lacking, whatever is appropriate for that area to accommodate the lot creation, we would be able to support. So again, I do provide an example in the report, and that example pertains to golf courses. We have a few golf courses within our municipality, and we've heard from those operators that millennials, believe it or not, don't like to golf as much as their parents or their grandparents. So these operators are finding that this land can be better utilized for residential purposes. So golf courses are rural lands. They're what we would deem rural lands in our official plan. So given the demographic changes that we discussed in the first pillar, and given this allowance, it would be possible to redesignate these lands for residential purposes. The next pillar is supporting certainty and economic growth. So again, similar to what I discussed with the settlement area boundary adjustments, you cannot amend your official plan outside of an OP review, and this was before PPS 2020, to add more employment lands. But now with PPS 2020, if you meet certain criteria, you can do that. So again, allowing us the flexibility to expand on our settlement area boundaries and expand on our employment lands outside of an OP review, which only occurs every 5 years. So it's not all about housing. We also talk about the environment and public safety in our report. And what's evident is that the province wants us to integrate the impacts of a changing climate in all our decisions affecting development. So you'll see enhancements to various policies which require planning authorities to prepare for the impacts of climate change when we're integrating stormwater planning, when we're planning for sewage and water services. We even have a definition of impacts of a changing climate now in the PPS. So just a good example of how PPS and planning really are pictures of what the community and society wants. And finally, we have reduced barriers and costs. So now there is a policy which states that we have to engage Indigenous communities and consider their interests when we're managing our cultural heritage and archaeological resources. Before, our Indigenous communities, with respects to their engagement, it was just a should, it wasn't a shall. Those are the major pillars. With respects to the town of Essex, we are doing a lot already in terms of meeting some of these policies. I always say we're really progressive. We are engaging in a climate change adaptation plan. We're going to undertake a new review of our development standards manual. And this year, in line with the County of Essex, we are proposing to commence our official plan review with an eye to all these changes. I know I'm very excited, and I think council should be too, and residents as well. And council and the public will be an integral stakeholder for both reviews. And that's all I have to add.
Thank you, Rita. I'm very excited. I know I come to Lori before on Don's proposal out there on the golf course. Would this include something like that, Lori, on his course? Lori?
Certainly, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Certainly, we'd have to take a look at any application and have some pre-consultation, and following the preceding report, we're excited to take in any new applications. So if that's the case, if any applicant wants to proceed and have us take a look, of course, we need to update our official plan to make sure that it's in line with the new PPS, and that certainly does take a little bit of time to update those policies, but certainly it's something that we would consider.
Yeah, because I've been working with Don, you know that, for a little while
Yes.
there on his proposal. I'm going to open it up to council. Any questions from council? Good. Seeing Councillor Bjorkman, go ahead.
Thank you, through your worship. Rita, it's always fun to hear your excited sound and just how much you enjoy this the policy issues, and it just really gives us as council and as a town somebody who's always going to bat for us. There's great changes here. We've talked about this before in the way that we've been handcuffed by county policies, by provincial policies, and it really does put a lot of that decision making back in our hands and our ability to make those decisions for ourselves. So I'm glad you're there taking care of the logistics of it. We can just come up with our ideas and you can tell us if we can do it or not. But I'm very happy with the way that that's going, and happy that you're here taking care of it. So thank you very much for the report.
Thank you, Councillor Bjorkman. I agree 100%. This is really opening up a whole lot of avenues for us. Councillor Bondi.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One of the topics that we dug in deep in the last term, and I kind of feel like it's unresolved, is remember when we did the ward boundary review, and we didn't realign the wards at all, but it was evident in the numbers that Ward 4 has, I guess you could say, overrepresented, because the number of, there was a whole bunch of different models, and if you go with the amount of people. So I'm not sure if this is something that council wants to look at. If we're defining the settlement boundaries around Harrow, do we want to have the discussion about, extending that ward at all? That's one discussion I think council should have, because when we added the 8th person to council, there was a lot of people in the community that said, don't add an 8th person. It's just, you're getting too big. And so from my interpretation and memory, we always said that we would review it during the next term of council. And I believe that's a very lengthy process, and not sure council wants to dive back into that. But we can certainly look at aligning boundaries to meet up with wards. And I'm just throwing it out there because it seems like it would possibly be fitting with this review and whatever. And then I really like the new changes coming, the tiny homes. I'm really excited about that. So if Rita, if you could just go through, like, what's the timeline now? Like, we're going to initiate like public feedback. Like, I really want to get some of these ideas out there that tiny homes can be possible in Essex, because that's a really exciting
Yeah,
Go ahead, Rita, if you want to answer that.
Yep. Through you, Mr. Chair, to Councillor Bondi. I'm very happy to hear all your enthusiasm. Secondly, there have been changes that have been made to the Planning Act with respects to additional residential units. So being able to put a separate detached structure on your property for the purposes of living in it other than the main dwelling. So the first step is going to be looking at our official plan and reviewing what we can do for housekeeping measures. I know with the additional residential units, we get questions about that all the time since these changes have been made. So again, as soon as possible, sitting down with our building department, myself and Mr. Watson and our assistant planner, and reviewing our official plan to see what can be done as a housekeeping measure before we implement a full-blown official plan review, which will come at the time of receiving housing projections, employment projections from the County of Essex. So as soon as possible, and it's the same process in terms of getting the notice out to residents and hosting that public meeting and getting it approved by the County of Essex.
Thank you, Rita. Councillor Vanendel, you were next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Ms. Chadwick, thanks very much for the report. It was really interesting. A lot of meaty stuff in there that we've been waiting for a long time. I'm glad to hear that Mr. Hearn's proposed development might get another hearing. I'm just wondering what other pent-up requests are out there that we might be able to satisfy during this. This could be a brief window of opportunity for us. If there's a change of government, you know, the clank could come down on us again. So I think we should make sure that we take advantage of this opportunity to satisfy whatever pent up demands we have for the new kinds of housing. Thank you.
Anybody else? Anybody else from council? No. Nobody else? I need a motion to receive the report, please. Councillor Bowman and Councillor Vanendel. All in favor? Thank you. Thank you, Rita, and thank you, Lori, for the report. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, 8.4 on the agenda is Legal and Legislative Services 2020-07, quarter of revision for James Shepley Drain, Bulger Bridge. And this together with bylaw 1918 for receipt, and that Kirk Carter, Percy Dufour, and Dan Boudreau be appointed to sit as members of the quarter revision, set to convene electronically at 4:30 p.m. on June 24th, and that bylaw 1918 accordingly receive provisional passage this evening.
You need a mover, please. Councillor Bowman and Councillor Bjorkman. All in favor? It's carried. Thank you.
(8.5) on the agenda, Fire and Rescue Services 2020-01, results of request for proposal for the supply and delivery of new custom mini pumper rescue fire truck for receipt, and that council awards the request for proposal to Commercial Emergency Equipment Corporation in the total amount of $359,931.73, and that council approve the additional funding of $59,931.73, the additional funding that's above the approved 2020 capital budget, by approving additional funding in that same amount from the Asset Management Life Cycle Reserve.
Need a mover, please. Councillor Bjorkman and Councillor Bowman. All in favor? Carried. Did you have a question, Deputy Mayor Malaj?
Yes, I do have a question.
Sorry about that. Go ahead.
Okay. Question would be to our Director of Community Services, Doug Sweet, because I don't think Chief Arnell's on the call tonight. Oh, yes, he is. I see you there, Chief Arnell. Question in regard to that purchase. So we were over budget on this item. Is it something that we could have waited another year for, or is it something that we absolutely needed to move forward within this current year?
ahead, Chief.
Through you, your worship. This was a last year budget item, and we had a team out of Station 3 work on designing the truck, and we got behind in it. It should have been done last year, and I guess bad on me, I didn't get it done, but we really need to get it. And as I in the report, as you see, the advantages of this mini pumper, especially for the Harrow Station area, there's really a lot of hard to reach confined areas that Harrow Station responds to, such as the third and fourth concession, narrow laneways. The Chrysler Greenway, we'll be able to use the vehicle and be able to get it down the Chrysler Greenway, and having it a dual purpose vehicle, it'll carry water and be able to pump, and if there's any minor fires, we can take care of them. So the unit were replaces in 1999. Its useful life was 20 years, and it's long past that useful life.
Okay, thank you very much for the answer.
Okay, Councillor Bondi.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with purchasing the truck and moving forward. I want to thank the chief for, sometimes it takes a while to order trucks. Other companies takes a couple, 1-2 years. So that's not atypical. While you're here, I think there's another exciting vehicle that the fire department has added recently. So if you could just quickly update council. I noticed in the check register an odd company. So I Googled it, and it's like, I don't know, rubber dinghies. So I'm really happy to see the fire department is taking the water rescue training very seriously. And it sounds like they're doing lots of training. So I just, maybe the rest of council would like to hear about what's going on, if they don't already know.
Go ahead, Chief, if you want to respond to that.
Through you, your worship. Thank you, Councillor Bondi. Yes, we bought a Rick Craft. We got that in February this year. We are moving forward as council directed us to work on an ice water rescue team. Our team is now assembled. Our team has all completed and passed and are certified to do the job. And as well, we have the craft, so we're getting all the tools put together. We're getting some flotation devices for the individuals. It's going to take us, and as we provided council, it's going to take us a few years to put it together. But right now, as we sit, we can respond and will respond in the event of a ice water emergency.
Thank you, Chief. Anybody else from council? Jeff, do you had something to add? Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, through the chair. I just wanted to add on to Deputy Mayor Malash's question there. So out of the solid financial decisions that council has made historically as it pertains to asset management and the decisions that you made through the 2020 budget with the commitments to asset management, it has provided us with the life cycle reserve. So any slight over expenditures that we have due to fluctuations in costing based on our estimates, we're in a position now where we can absorb those. And then any under expenditures that we have, those flow back into the life cycle reserve. So rather than trying to look through a giant budget document and pick and choose projects that maybe we can underspend on to get this done, we have the flexibility now in year where we can pull and replenish. So I just wanted to bring that up and just say thanks for the solid financial decisions as it pertains to the commitment to asset management and the life cycle reserve.
Thank you, Jeff. Anybody else? All in favor of the report, please? It's carried. Thank you. Thank you, Chief.
(8.6) this evening, Mr. Mayor, is Infrastructure Services 2020-03, re 2020 Bridge and Culvert inspections. That said report be received and that council appoints the engineering firm of Keystone Bridge Management Corp. To provide those engineering services to complete the inspections. And this is in accordance with the completed requests under section 22.3 of our procurement bylaw.
Any questions on this one? I need a mover, please. Need a mover, Councillor Vanendon and Councillor Bowman. All in favor? Carried. Thank you.
Item 9, Mr. Mayor, no reports from our youth members. Item 10, any updates from County Council?
Deputy Mayor Milosh, if you can just speak, maybe we asked about the internet service. So if you want to speak on that a little bit.
Correct. So yes, Councillor or Mayor Snively brought up the issue of having the internet sooner rather than later. What they talked about was the multiplier factor of, we invested $1 million into SWIFT going back, I think it was around 2010, somewhere around there. But the multiplier effect was 12 times payback. So our $1 million will get us $12 million. Will get us $11 million of grants so that we're getting $12 million worth of work back in the county. We both expressed, and there were other councillors that expressed their dissatisfaction with the speed of time that it was taking to get SWIFT to move into the area. But our CAO for the county, Rob Masonville, has assured us that he believes that things will start moving a little faster with regard to internet service, particularly with the provincial government trying to institute at-home virtual learning with educational system, particularly through this COVID-19. So I think you're going to see something happen a little quicker rather than a little later. But that again is just the base, the booster type system. We will still have to work at trying to get internet door to door ourselves as a municipality once this infrastructure is put in place. Couple of things I want to talk to you about as well. A couple of interesting things for County Council on Wednesday night. One of them was the fact that there is a letter from Fort Erie requesting that the province spend more money, put more money towards internet services and expanding the internet into rural areas of Ontario. And that would include Essex County, all our rural areas. But of course, that would benefit our urban areas as well. And so I will be pulling that out of the consent emails that we're going to be passing on Wednesday night, so that to make sure that the County of Essex supports Fort Erie's request, and that we send a letter as well as the county to try and get more money quicker. The other interesting thing on Wednesday night is going to be that the provincial government is also advising the county and the town of Kingsville and Leamington of their intentions to expand number 3 highway and proceed with an EA, and everything that the town of Essex has already gone through with the Ministry of Transportation. They've gotten a letter saying that they want to deal with the next section as well, not just the part that goes through Essex Center. So that'd be interesting to see. And that's it. That's the most interesting portions of Wednesday night's meeting.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Anybody else have any questions for us? Councillor Vanendon, you had a question? Go ahead.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, to the Deputy Mayor, Mr. Balash. Was there any indication from the county when they talk about SWIFT and, we're going to get payback of 12 times, blah, blah, blah. Is there any indication of their discussion of where the trunk lines are going to go? SWIFT doesn't hook up houses. It just, it builds trunk lines between communities. Is there any negotiation over this? Do we get to any input into that beforehand? Because that could limit our choices depending on where they put those trunk lines.
That's something that's already out there to view. They already have a floor plan of where they want. They've got the whole province already divided up and exactly where they've got the lines coming in with high fiber, and that's probably something that we can discuss. But there's already a network plan laid out And I believe you can view that on the county's website.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Okay,
You're welcome.
thank you.
Mr. Mayor, item 11 under the correspondence, 11.1 is correspondence to be received on consent. That those items listed in 11.1 be received on consent and where applicable to further share such information.
I'm a mover, please, on this, or any questions? I guess, hold on 1 sec. We only have 3 of you showing here. There you go. Any questions on this one? Do you have a question, Councillor Bowman? Did you have a question?
Just a comment, if you look at 11.1.2, it talks about a universal basic income. It's amazing how this keeps popping up every so many years. I can remember a national party, Réal Couette from Quebec many years ago proposed a similar thing. And every once in a while, somebody comes up with the same idea. So I don't expect this one to fly either. Just a comment.
Thank you. Thank you. Anybody else from council? Go ahead.
Get a mover inside.
Yeah, I need a mover on this, please. Councillor Bowman and Councillor Bjorkman. All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. I'm going to do all these.
11.2 on the agenda, Mr. Mayor, is correspondence to be considered for receipt or receive and support. And this is correspondence from the town of Tecumseh seeking, in which the town of Tecumseh has made a request to Post Media to reconsider the permanent closure of community weekly newspapers. That the said correspondence either be received or received and supported, and if so supported, that the appropriate letter of support be sent to Post Media Network, Inc.
And what's the pleasure of the council? Do you want to receive and support? Councillor Bowman. Receive and support?
I move receive and support, and simply because it's very important for small municipalities like ours to have a local papers that sort of reflect our communities. And I think these other communities are going to be the poor for not having these community papers in their area.
Good. I agree. Seconder, Councillor Vanendal.
No, I'm not seconding. I have.
Okay, you have a question? Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair, I'd like to say that
Point of order.
Okay, sorry. I need a seconder first. Deputy Mayor Malash.
Okay.
Go ahead, Councillor Vanendal.
As a former Post Media employee myself and a media veteran of 40 years, I can't support this. You can't ask a private company to keep publishing unwanted products at a loss. These papers sadly have lost their readers and lost their advertising base, and they're no longer economical to operate. And if they have to go away, that's too bad, but they have to go away. And I'd like to remind people that there are new publications starting up all across Essex County right now, online publications actually being started by Torstar. So, and I believe there's another one in another town locally. So even though business decisions are being made and some of these papers are going away and we're very nostalgic about it, especially politicians who like to see our names and faces in the newspapers, I don't think we have any right to ask a private company to keep losing money on them. What we should do is thank the staff for their service over the years and say, you know, so long and thanks for all the fish, but we can't ask them to keep operating. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Anybody else? Councillor Bondi.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Vanderdolen makes really good points. I'll be supporting the motion anyways, because I feel like it's the neighborly thing to do at this point. And it's all the more reason right now for residents in our municipality to look at our 2 local papers that we have, the Harrow News and the Essex Free Press, and support them in any way possible. And really hope that they get their readership up. I think our papers, I've read the Post Media's, by working at my other job, working around, they were more cut and paste. They weren't that hometown feel like we have. It was a different type of paper. So unfortunately, I don't think lobbying them is going to help. My hope for those communities is that somebody like a Harrow News or an Essex Free Press takes root there and does printing, advertising. We really in our municipality are really lucky to have newspapers that cover our council meetings, cover local, cover municipal, cover provincial, cover federal. Like, we are so lucky. So support the businesses that advertise in our local papers. And the town is doing a great job advertising in our papers now. So, if you're watching this, get our newspapers, because we don't want to be a municipality that gets rid of print. Online isn't for everybody. I would never read the Windsor Star if it was online. I need a hard copy paper because I'm online way too much. So it's unfortunate for these communities. I will be supporting the motion, but I think more importantly for our residents is that we have to support our own papers.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Melange.
Thank you, through your worship. I agree. I understand Councillor Vanderdolen's position. I think it's difficult, and I don't even know if it's feasible to talk to this company to say come back and operate at a loss. But as Councillor Bondi pointed out, I'm going to be voting in favor as a neighborly thing with some of our other communities that feel that they were blindsided by the fact that this business closed up so rather quickly without even trying to come up with an alternative, perhaps, or making an outreach to the public or to the local government to see if there was something that could possibly be done to continue the livelihood of these papers. I'm going to support it because I think local papers are very important. It's just sending a message that I believe that. And as Councillor Bondi said, I'm so glad that we have the two newspapers in our towns. They cover all of the events. If I want to have a little bit of a pick-me-up and reading something, I pick up our local newspapers. I read the Harrow News and the Essex Free Press every week religiously in order to have read about the positive things that are going on in the community. They always seem to highlight the exciting events that have happened in town. They keep people informed. And it's true that computer world is not for everybody. Online papers, I think we're going to be moving more and more so in that direction. I'm hoping myself that our newspapers in Essex and Harrow can continue on. And I know that there's a lot of not jealousy, but there's a lot of other communities that wish they had the successful newspapers that we have in our towns. And let's just keep our fingers crossed that, and we should be supporting these papers. And, if we've got an ad to run, every once in a while, take out an ad to help support and, get some of your printed supplies, because they're not just newspaper outlets. They also, I know in Harrow, they do a lot of work other than just the newspaper. They do a lot of printing. They do business cards, a lot of stuff that you can get there, flyers and so on. And they're fantastic at it. So just a plug to our newspapers, please get out there and support our newspapers, because we don't want to be in that same position. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Guerin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you. Yeah, I'll be supporting it as well. I mean, I am a graduate of the journalism program at Safeguard College. Councillor Van Allen is right on. I mean, we can't stop companies from choosing to go out of business and stop making a paper. But with that, opens up an opportunity for someone locally, hopefully, to step in. This Post Media is a large company, and this is an opportunity. We are talking about smaller community papers, and hopefully there's somebody with an appetite out there that will open up the paper in another name, maybe, or even adopt the name. But yeah, I see no reason why not to support it, regardless of the fact that it may not be able to, might go on deaf ears.
Thank you, Councillor. Anybody else? Okay, all in favor of supporting it? Opposed? One. You want that recorded, Councillor Vanendel? No, doesn't matter. Okay, thank you.
Item 12 under minutes, that the Drainage Board meeting minutes of April 27th be received and adopted as circulated.
Mover, please, Deputy Mayor Malash and Councillor Bowman. All in favor? Carried. Thank you.
Under financial, the 13.1 the April bank payments report, that said bank payments report be ratified as submitted.
Mover, please. Councillor Guerin and Councillor Bjorkman. All in favor? Carried. Thank you.
Under item 15.1, Mr. Mayor, we have notices of motion that were first presented at the May 19th meeting and are being brought forward for consideration this evening. The first notice of motion, when Councillor Verbeek contacted the clerk's office to advise of regrets for this evening, she asked that or stated that it was her wish that council wished to continue discussing this item, that this matter move forward. The notice of motion as originally presented was that council and administration look at ways to assist town businesses, such as allowing outdoor spaces for businesses in light of the limitations due to the COVID pandemic. Would need a mover and a seconder on this.
I need a mover, please, for this, to consider this. Deputy Mayor Malash and Councillor Bowman. All in favor of it? Okay, good. Go ahead.
Is there any discussion on that?
Any discussion on this one at all from council? Deputy Mayor Malash.
So, Mr. Mayor, I'm just looking for some direction. Are we looking to explore and share some ideas this evening, or is this just to go to a report to administration, or administration looking for ideas from council?
I think what Councillor Verbeek was looking for was some ideas to support businesses and how we can create traffic for them. Is that correct, Rob?
Through Mr. Mayor, I think generally that was part of the discussion. But I mean, it's ultimately council's wish as far as whether it's just a discussion at this point.
Go ahead, Councillor Bowman.
Yeah, just reading Kim's message and some of the feedback we got from her with regard to some, for example, little booths on the side of the stores on this sidewalk side, and they were talking about tent things. Those are great ideas, but some of it infringes on town property, so we have to look at the idea of liability that would go with it, and how do we make some arrangements where you can use town property on those things, like we used to do with the old Grand, I will say, with its cafe out front. Those are the type of things that I think might work, but then they take a lot of involvement with the municipality as far as getting proper easements and all that type of thing. And then you also have to deal with the spaces. Now you have your 6-foot area. So on sidewalks, it's pretty hard to get a 6-foot space plus some space on the store side for little tables or something to display stuff. So I think this is an area that really needs administration to look at some aspects that might work to allow freer movement of pedestrian traffic along the streets. And maybe it's to remove some of the on-street parking, say on Talbot Street in the downtown area, just to allow more space for people to move. Just some thoughts, but I think it basically is going to come down to administration to look at some ideas that might work and probably work with the BIA at the same time. It's not going to be an easy fix to put out because of space restrictions. So, but I think it's a good idea, and I think the businesses themselves are looking for creative ways to attract people. So anything we can do to help, I think is a good idea.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Malash.
Yes, through you, your worship. So I too believe, and there's a ton of ideas there. So just the one that I'm going to talk about, and then gives other people an opportunity, is the same idea of what Councillor Bowman's talking about. I would actually like to see us go one step further here and talk with the BIA if they're comfortable with us doing it. Put up, block the parking off from Victoria down to Arthur. No traffic through the traffic light, block the traffic light off. And put barriers up, no parking, put barriers up, our barriers, the town of Essex barriers, so that they can come further out on the sidewalk and people can actually walk on the parking space areas that are there now. People would have to park a little bit further, so businesses would have to buy into this, but they would have the sidewalk area kind of coming out of their store in order to have some outside wares for sale, and it would give plenty of room for people to walk with social distancing. We would only do this maybe, let's say, from the long weekend in July through till Labor Day weekend, or maybe Thanksgiving, something like that. And this would also give restaurants an opportunity to have a little bit of a outside cafe, maybe on the sidewalk. I would also like to see maybe a reduction of the speed downtown down to 30 kilometers an hour, and we'd have to post signs, pass a bylaw that says 30 kilometers an hour from Victoria through to Arthur. And it sounds like a lot of work, and it is to make that happen. But I think that's something that would happen in the core in downtown Essex. Again, with Harrow, we'd have to look at doing that through the main drag. I'm not sure exactly how far we'd want to go. If we'd want to go all the way down, down to the IGA, Sampson's, and I'm not sure how far the other way. I would suggest that we wouldn't want to go down Queen Street or anything like that, but the parking would be taken up in downtown Harrow too. And again, we'd have to look at what the Chamber of Commerce would like us to do before we move forward. But the same type of idea, maybe make that for the 2 months of summer, start the long weekend in July and go till the Labor Day weekend or something like that. Just give them the 2 months to be able to have some outside space for selling their wares. That's my idea. I'd like us to look at maybe doing that and getting cooperation with the Chamber and with the BIA, and see where that goes. That's it for me.
I agree with what you're saying there, Deputy Mayor Malash. It's a BIA and Chamber, eh? I think administration should take our ideas forward and see what they say. Councillor Guerin, you had a question? Councillor Guerin, you had an idea?
I think Councillor Bjorkman had his hand up before me.
Pardon me?
I think Councillor Bjorkman had his hand up before me. He can go.
Go ahead, Councillor Bjorkman. Sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, no problem. I guess I don't know that we would get a lot of happy people from businesses if we take the parking away from Main Street in Essex. I spent a lot of time dealing with the businesses there, and they truly get and believe they get most of their business from people parking in front of their store. I like the idea, but I think there would be a lot of pushback from the businesses with regard to that. I do think we should allow them to use the sidewalk. We need to come up with a minimum width of sidewalk so that we have people able to pass by, and then give the stores and the restaurants whatever's left of the sidewalk to have, the same thing we do with sidewalk sales. Have your wares out there, and then if you need something, if you've got a portable tent you want to put out, a portable shade sail, something like that, for inclement weather. So if you can only have 2 people in your store at a time, there's a spot for the 2 people to stand if the weather's not good, to allow them to do that. And we need to make sure that we need no fees, no permits, no charges to do that. That's how the town can help, is by saying, okay, you can use this space as long as you leave that area so that a wheelchair accessible, whatever we need to be able to get down the sidewalk and get through. And we can do that right. And we say, okay, as far as the outdoor dining, allowing restaurants, tables in front of their restaurant, the same thing. Now, there's the reason for the railing is if there's going to be alcohol served, you have to have a railing or a fence or some way to keep that area apart from the sidewalk. And I think that's something we can approach the province and have asked them to approach the AGCO to maybe, take a pass on that for this season. There's going to be a lot of places that are going to try to extend their dining rooms, especially if outdoor dining becomes more available. So then do we allow them to use half their parking lots, put picnic tables outside, since they're losing the space inside, and have that as additional space for them to use? So I think there's a couple levels of things for us to look at. And I would say, but the first thing, and it was a couple of the ideas that business owners brought to Kim, or to Councillor Verbeek, that she had in her emails, of allowing them to start with, can we have part of the sidewalk? Can we put up a shelter in case it's raining, so I'm not losing customers that can't get into my store? And gives them somewhere to wait and gives them somewhere else to sell. And I think we can do that right away by allowing that and not having to have them apply for it or have a permit to do it. Just simply as an act to say, that's a good idea. Go ahead and start with that. And we'll see what else we can do moving forward.
Thank you, Councillor. Who is next? Councillor Garin.
Thank you, thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. It's difficult. There's no wrong suggestion or bad suggestions. I think the intent of Councillor Verbeek's motion, unless I'm wrong, was I think she's looking for a resolve for all businesses, not just businesses that have properties on main streets in Harrow or in Essex. And I think that's the solutions we should be looking for, something that we can help all businesses with. Although, like I say, there's no bad suggestions out there. We also have to be concerned with some of the challenges, safety, especially when you're talking about our main street and opening up areas along the sidewalks for people to walk closer to the roads or in the parking spaces. Although I do like a lot of those ideas. I guess my suggestion would probably be, if I know it's time sensitive, is perhaps council could, each one of us can come up with some ideas that we have of our own, send them through to administration and ask for administration to gather them and maybe send back a report that makes sense, that looks after lots of things like our costs associated with it and safety and all that kind of stuff. But I really think her intent, if we can come to a solution tonight or not, was to help all the businesses on a whole, perhaps purchasing the signage for their businesses, or perhaps helping them with some of the costs to reopen. Because a lot of the businesses that are already deemed essential, they're dealing with some of these problems that we're talking about, putting a tent outside if it's raining, and like looking at, say, a place I don't frequent much, but the LCBO in Essex, you can wait out there 10, 20 people deep and it starts pouring rain and you get wet. So that's kind of my thoughts on it.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Benedum, then I want to say something. Go ahead, Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the rest of our council. I think Councillor Verbeek wants to hear from all of us that we're all in this together, that we want to do something, and I think that seems pretty clear. And I agree with the general thrust of what she suggested, what the Deputy Mayor suggested, what Councillor Borkman suggested. I'm afraid I agree with Steve that the parking is going to be an issue. I don't think they really like that. But I think what we should do is, rather than us decide what they're going to do, is to just get the message to the business community that we will let them experiment, and that we're willing to let them use some public space or waive fees. Or, I mean, we really can't make any handouts. All we can do is reduce paperwork or red tape, and help them enable their brilliant ideas. So although I have to point out, we did give away $100,000 tonight for the waivers and delays in tax payments, and that's significant. So that's a good thing that we contributed. But I think we just need to tell them, like, come up with some ideas, share them with us, and we'll try and make this stuff happen. Thanks.
So Councillor Vanendon, to that, do you think that maybe, I'm going to say to council, do you think that maybe administration should look out to contact the president of the BIA and the president of the chamber and see exactly what they want and what they need to help them. So I'll go to our CEO and see if he's got something to add. Go ahead, Chris.
Thank you, Worship. Yeah, along those lines, Your Worship, I think is the way to go. I mean, we're administration for the town. The BIAs and the chambers are the voice for the businesses, and we don't necessarily know what they want. So I think it's very important to understand what they want, because as you heard tonight already, it's a great idea to take away parking, but someone who was a previous business owner there doing that might not be such a great idea for the actual businesses there. So I think it's important to work with the BIA and the chamber. I also think it's important, when you start providing structure for our residents to be under on public property, there becomes a liability and exposure to that, right? So it's not as simple as saying, hey, construct something to on our property to house our residents, and yes, we can waive fees and we can waive permits, but there's still the safety component to it, right? I mean, and that gets into that hoarding bylaw. When someone's out doing work on their building, they have to have proper scaffolding. They have to have all these types of things to ensure that not only the people traveling under it are safe, but the people traveling beside it are safe. So it's definitely something we can look at. I think along the lines what the mayor noted, administration come back with a report to gather some of the ideas together, talk to the chamber, talk to the BIA, try and get something with some quick wins there that we can move forward. There are some things we're already doing to assist businesses, and I think maybe it's a chance to highlight that. As Councillor Vanderdolen noted, the deferral of the taxes, they're a reminder of the CIP programs and whatnot. So there are lots of things that we're doing to help business that way. And maybe this will be a time to wrap that up into a report for council with some ideas on some potential things that can help businesses for the next meeting.
Thank you, Chris. Councillor Bondi.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just following what other cities are doing. So I don't think we have to reinvent the wheel with many of these ideas. The City of Windsor has a COVID-19 small business action plan. One of the things that kind of stuck out in there, and it was also a theme in Councillor Verbeek's messages, and I made some phone calls on the weekend too, and sanitizer product availability and providing that may be something that if we have a little bit of a budget at all with economic development, maybe, and I'm not thinking big, but maybe each business gets a container of hand sanitizer, just saying we understand, businesses right now are having increased expenses with less revenue. One of the worries that was coming in Harrow was, yes, we want the streetscape. We really want the streetscape, but this year they're going to be hit by COVID. And then people in Harrow want to know when the timeline for the streetscape is starting. And we're going to lose, I don't know, are we going to lose the downtown Main Street for a month? Some businesses have back alleys, that's good, but how can we accommodate those businesses? Because it'll be worth it in the end, but it'll be like a double hardship for some of those businesses. So we have to really work closely with the Harrow businesses and support them during that. I think a lot of good ideas, and this is kind of timely. So I don't know, I'm just going to throw it out there. We did mention earlier tonight in the first meeting that we were talking about the 8th having another closed session. I don't know if we could have another discussion about this, or if we're still waiting till the 15th. unfortunately, Councillor Verbeek couldn't be here tonight, and she's got a lot of ideas that she couldn't share.
Anybody else? Thank you. Go ahead.
Fifteen point 1.2 was deferred at the request of the mover until the June 15th meeting, and that was Councillor Verbeek's notice of motion on recycling efforts. 15.1.3, as presented at the last council meeting, that administration be directed to provide a geese mitigation report for Colchester Beach, including the use of a walking dog to be used to scare geese in order to improve the beach user experience, water quality, and student workload, as moved by Councillor Bondi and would require a second.
I need a seconder for this. Councillor Bjorkman, seconded. Discussion? Councillor Bondi.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I believe it's pretty straightforward, and it might not even be anything that's feasible for 2020 because of budget constraints, but it's something that we could put in the budget in 2021 to say, you know, is this something we want to look at? So when I first joined council, we had a roughly $8,000 in the budget for crows in Essex. And I remember this because Miss Hunter, when she was with us, you know, told me, oh, we got $8,000. We used to shoot off bangers in Ward 1 because there were so many crows. It was such an issue. So it's not outlandish that we can do something to mitigate animals in a humane way. And I love animals, but I also love the beach. And, you know, I'm seeing real estate agents posting on their Facebook and Twitter, come to Colchester. It's a beautiful place. And I want it to remain a beautiful place. And then you see that, you know, the health unit is testing the water and the numbers of E. coli are really high. And you think, well, does that have anything to do with the amount of animal feces that are right there? So just throwing it out there because it was brought to my attention from residents in that area. It wasn't something that I'm championing myself. I'm just bringing it forward on some residents' behalf and looking for council feedback.
Thank you. Anybody from council? Councillor Vanendel.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, I think it's a good idea that we get rid of the geese, but I'm not sure we need to hire somebody to do it. We could kill two birds with one stone, so to speak. If maybe we let people who have dogs run them on the beach, as long as we'd have to stringently enforce the pooper scooper rules. But if we let people allow their dogs off the leash to run to chase the geese, then they'd be very pleased with this. It wouldn't cost us anything to get rid of the geese. It's either that or we have to hand out little pamphlets to them to give them directions to jack miners.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Bjorkman, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It is a problem down on the.
Councillor, you're really echoing. Councillor, you're really echoing for some reason. And it's only you when you're speaking.
Okay.
Maybe try. There you go.
I don't know why.
Go ahead.
I don't know if I can touch anything on this thing to make a difference.
No, you're good right now.
Anyways, I'll carry on. So there's a lot of different ways that we can look at it, and it's good that it's being brought up and talked about. The dog is one option. There are many other options. Geese are afraid of a lot of different things. There's things that we can do to mitigate why geese come to our beach. Food is a big reason for them to come. They don't nest on our beach. We don't find nesting pairs staying there. We don't have, and if we get rid of all of our seaweed, if we are consistent with breaking up the beach, maybe we can look at the cadence that we do that. Can we increase it? There's ways of they've got dogs that you can cut out that go on swivels like we put on the docks to keep the birds off of boats. And you can have a silhouette of a dog 2 or 3 different places on the beach and move them around. There's, I went and looked to see what it is that geese hate, what other people and other towns are doing in order to get rid of this. And then once we have our people on the beach, well, the geese are gone. During the day, when you go down there on a Saturday, Sunday afternoon in July and August, there's no geese because they're not fans of having people around. So part of it is occupying our beach, using our beach. Councillor Vanderdolen's idea of bringing the public down there. I don't know if I'll be in favor of letting dogs run loose on the beach. Not all dogs are fans of little kids that are digging in holes, and some little kids just love a dog and they can't keep themselves from touching them. So I don't know if we could do that, but certainly walking them, exercising, giving a reason for our residents to come down to the beach and occupying that beach will do a lot to getting rid of geese. So there's a number of things that we can do. I think it's a good idea for administration to come back to us. We had the problem on Dock B 2 years ago with so many seagulls. You couldn't hardly get down to the end of that dock without sliding. And part of that was there was no power, no water on Dock B, so people weren't occupying the dock. So the birds did. So there's a number of things we can do before we need to get into the expense of hiring a dog walker or getting a dog of our own, or there's lots of other options there. So I think it's important for us to look at it. I don't think 2020 is going to be a really big issue with the beach. I'm hoping I'm wrong and that it comes around faster, but we'll see. But it is worth looking at for next year. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Just to add to that, I'm not in favor of hiring anybody with a dog down there. And, Councillor Bjorkman, they do have young down there. They do nest. There's a few nests that's been down there last year. I haven't seen any this year yet, but last year there was a lot of young geese down there. A lot of, I don't know where they're hatching them there, but it's right in the harbor there somewhere. But I don't know. I really don't know how to get rid of geese. You know what? We can. I think it's a good idea what you're saying. Have something on the beach, but geese will come back. It doesn't matter. They get used to people. They'll scare them off, and the very next day they're back in there again. Early in the morning, you can go down there. Any morning, you live right by there. You go down there every morning. They're there. They're on the beach. They've already did their damage to the water. They already contaminated the water. To me, to get rid of the geese, we're not the only municipality that has this problem. Believe me, Leamington is saturated with geese all over the place dropping. And they're in the same situation trying to get rid of them. You can't hunt them there. You can't destroy nests. Okay, if you touch a nest, you're going to be in problems. So I don't know how we get rid of them, to be honest with you. I guess we can keep trying to scare them out, but they're going to come. They'll come back. They will come back. So if council has any other ideas to bring forward, go ahead, Councillor.
Just saying, because other people are having the issue and they haven't figured it out, doesn't mean it can't be figured out, and it doesn't mean it hasn't been figured out somewhere else. There's best practices. We need to open our minds up to a little more and work to find a way. It's a beautiful gem. It's something to be proud of. It's something that we need to protect. It's something that we need to take ownership of. And we need to continue to look for ways.
Thank you, Councillor. I agree, but it's going to be tough to get rid of them. Anybody else? Did you have anything, Chris, on this issue? Or CEO?
Actually, through worship, we're going to pass it over to Doug Sweet, the Director of Community Services. He's done a little bit of background on this, so he can add some more insight for council.
Go ahead, Doug.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilors that have spoke to this have done a great job in terms of what's out there right now. There's been other options in our surrounding municipalities of one municipality is using a dog, but there is a cost to that. Some are looking at the behavior modifications to some of the things that Councilor Bjorkman mentioned. The key is, and it has been mentioned, is the type where we're at in the season now where they're already goslings. You're supposed to address it before they start doing the nesting. So in terms of 2020, it'll be hard to address that. And the way we can do that is with the news tonight from our CEO. Hopefully we'll get more use on the beach and I'll keep the geese away that way. So hopefully that'll help for 2020. I'll continue to do more research and then come back with a report to council to see what alternatives are out there and something I would recommend talking the 2021 budget.
Good. Thank you, Doug. Anybody else from council? Thank you. Thanks for the input. I know it's a problem because I see it down there on a weekly basis.
I don't think we voted on
Oh, yeah. On a notice motion, all in favor? Carried. Thank you.
15.2 on this evening's agenda. The following two notices of motion are being presented only this evening and being brought back for consideration at the June 15th regular council meeting. The first notice of motion from Councillor Bondi, listed as 15.2.1 on the agenda. The council approved an extension of the 50km/h speed limit zone on the third concession to include east of McLean Side Road to act as a buffer zone. And secondly, as added during adoption of published agenda this evening as 15.2.2, notice of motion as moved by Councillor Bondi, that council hire a consultant to review the 2018 election policies and bylaws as seen as a priority to council at the September 3rd meeting, and due to workload and nature of the review has not been completed yet, and that council sees the review as necessary to have elections with public trust in mind in the future, that we use the funds earmarked in the budget for council wage increases.
Thank you.
Item 16, any reports and announcements from the council members this evening?
Councillor Bjorkman. You're good. Councillor Vandendolen, anything?
Nothing tonight, thank you.
Councillor Garrett.
Nothing, thank you.
Councillor Bowman. No. Deputy Mayor Malash.
I'm all set. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Bondi.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just for this weekend's Unemployed Help Center food drive, 9 to 11 in Essex and 12 to 2 in Harrow. Just to put the word out there for each of us, this is different than a food bank. There is no means test. You don't have to bring financial statements. You just show up. They do ask your address and your birthday so that they know for stats purposes who they're helping, so they can, bring some information back to their donor. So it's really non-judgmental, and anybody can come. If you're in need, just come. So if we could, as council, show up and spread the word on social media, that would really be helpful for our community. And also, I just want to make sure that how I was putting out my information was correct earlier. When I meant err on the side of caution and err on the side of swabbing, I meant for our most vulnerable citizens, migrant workers being one, and those in long-term care. I agree with opening back up our economy and protecting the most vulnerable. Thank you.
I have something tonight I want to bring up. I don't want to sit here and scold council members, but the emails that's coming through from certain councilors, one right after another, almost every day emails are coming through. We have a very, very busy administrative staff, especially our top staff like Chris and Rob. To answer emails day after day after day is quite challenging, and it's time consuming with the COVID virus that's going around and everything that administration's doing. Okay, I would love, if it's very, very important to send an email, send the email. But if it's not urgent, please hold off a little bit until we come through this COVID situation, because you're taking away valuable time with administrative staff to answer some of these emails that, and to copy everybody. From this day forward, I don't want to be copied on emails that really don't concern me directly. If you want to send an email, email the people that's involved. I don't want emails sent to me. Okay, I have more valuable time. Thank you.
Item 17 on the agenda, bylaws. 17.1.1 is bylaw 1916, and that's for third reading to confirm the proceedings from the May 19th meeting.
Need a mover, please? Deputy Mayor Malash and Councillor Bowman. All in favor? Carried.
Bylaw 1904, also for third reading this evening, is a bylaw to provide for the bailiff's training.
Mover, please. Councillor Bjorkman and Councillor Vandendoel. All in favor? Carried.
And bylaw 1917 for two readings this evening is a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of this June 1st, 2020 regular council meeting.
Mover, please. Councillor Darren and Councillor Bowman. All in favor? Carried. And I need a motion to adjourn.
Can I just jump in here through your worship?
Yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to let council know I got correspondence back from the health unit. They're going to continue testing as long as they're open, regardless of how many show up. So,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I figured that. Thank you, Chris. Okay, notice to adjourn. Motion to adjourn. Deputy Mayor Malaj and Councillor Bjorkman. All in favor? Carried. Thank you, council. Good evening.